Hi, everyone. Welcome to the September Community Hour. We're going to give it a couple minutes and let some folks hop on. How's everyone doing today?
Wonderful.
Fantastic. And in fact, while we're waiting for folks to join, let's see here. We've got, I think right now the furthest east might be Dino, and the furthest west that I'm aware of at the moment is Chicago, where Jenny is. But let's see if we can expand that out. I wonder if Aaron's further west. All right. Rochester, Minnesota. Fantastic.
Nice. We got Kansas. Awesome.
Boston's good. That's the only one I understand, being British at Emporia Case. You have to interpret for me, guys. Thank you.
KS is that's Kansas, the two-letter Kansas or states.
Got it.
All right.
Awesome. Well, looks like we have a good number of folks on, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Community Hour. My name is Jenny Norris, and I'm the Senior Membership and Programs Coordinator here at Elevate Technology User Group. Elevate Technology User Group is an independent customer-led Dell Technologies HCI and CI customers on the multi-cloud journey. So we're here to modernize your IT infrastructure. We help bring members together by doing in-person events and virtual events to kind of share best practices and networking with each other in virtual and in-person meetings. So for today's event, I'd like to remind everyone to use the Q&A function to ask questions, and also use the chat function for any discussion that you would like to have further. Before the end of today's community hour, I will be including a link to a survey for you to complete. This will be feedback that will be used for future events for us, which is really important information. And with all that being said, we will pass it over to you, David.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jenny. And thanks everybody for joining us for another Elevate Technology User Group Community Hour. Fantastic program for you today. I'm David Giesica, your host, and joining me as my co-host, Chris Stanley, Vice President of Network Operations at LoopUp, but also, and for me, more importantly, the President of the Elevate Technology User Group. Chris, thanks for co-hosting with me. And boy, do we have a fantastic couple of special guests. We're going to talk multi-cloud, and to do that today, Dino Bordenaro, pardon me, Dino Bordenaro, Azure Practice Lead and Microsoft MVP from MediaLine Group, joins us all the way from Germany, as well as Kenny Lowe, Director of Multi-Cloud Evangelism, Microsoft Regional Director from Dell Technologies. He's up in Scotland. Chris is over in Wales. I'm in Massachusetts in New England. So and we've got some folks all the way out in Kansas and Minnesota, and maybe even points further west. We're going to have a fantastic conversation. Again, please do get engaged with us. Use the chat, use the questions, Q&A. We'll get that done. We've got some polls for you. And we want to really get into this multi-cloud conversation, because I think what you're going to find today is it's very pertinent to you, and it's very pertinent to everybody who's a part of the Elevate Technology User Group. Before we get started, a quick note to thank our sponsors, Dell Technologies, VMware, and Intel, for helping to make this happen. All right, fantastic. Gentlemen, it is great to see you. Thank you again for joining. Kenny,
great to be here. Thank you, David.
Chris, thank you. Dino, awesome. All right, so what we're going to do is I'd love to just set the context. Chris, folks kind of know you, but if they don't, you're the co-host with me, so we'll hit you last. Dino, could you start by introducing yourself, please, and tell the folks a little bit about what you do and MediaLine Group?
Yes, thank you for having me here. So my name is Dino Bordenaro. I'm located in Germany, close to Frankfurt. So my company and we help customers on their journey to modern infrastructure. So my practice is basically Azure Stack all up since a lot of years, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud these days. And I'm one of the evangelists basically of multi-cloud infrastructure, going with Dell for a very long time and giving my practice and all my knowledge to the community, helping customers transform to the right direction. And yeah, this is what I do basically with my team 24/7. And I have a lot of fun on these journeys, helping customers identifying the use cases and finding the best solution for them, which accelerates their business. And at the same time makes their business easier to maintain and run the IT operations. And my company MediaLine is located in Wiesbaden. We're like 550 people from 7 companies in the group. So we are like a general big company having a lot of products and stuff, but what makes us special is we're very specialized in some topics. And one is my topic, like Azure and Azure Stack and especially Azure Hybrid.
Fantastic, Dino. That's great. And thank you for joining us. Kenny Lowe.
Yeah.
Again, dig your background and please let the folks know a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Well, our story begins 20 years ago. No, I'm kidding. Kenny Lowe, I lead multi-cloud technical evangelism at Dell. The team I lead was once upon a time known as the VxSeals, focused on VxRail. So some of you may know that name. Actually, I see some VxSeals alumni in the invitee list there. So awesome to see you folks there as well. What we do now is we focus on a whole host of exciting and different technologies across the Azure, Red Hat, and VMware ecosystems. From a personal perspective, I've been in IT for, well, about 20 years now. At this point, it started off many years ago on a help desk doing Exchange 5.5, NT4 administration there. I did a lot of Exchange migrations for many years across lots of different roles in banking and publishing, in AAA video games. I ended up working leading the Azure practice for a large UK service provider. And then for the last 5 years, I've been at Dell championing hybrid and multi-cloud solutions here. For the last 7 years, I've been a Microsoft MVP. For the last few weeks, I've been a Microsoft Regional Director. What does that mean? Nobody knows. But I guess my passion, my passion is community. My purpose is education, and my wardrobe is all swag. So that's me.
Fantastic, Kenny. Thanks. It's great to introduce you to the user group members, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot more of you as well. Love evangelists. Chris, you're a regular, but also for the folks who might not know you, real quick, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Chris Stanley. My role by day is Vice President of Network Operations at LoopUp. We are primarily a cloud telephony provider through our own direct routing through Microsoft Teams. The relevance, I suppose, today, which is our current environment, we've got some VxRail already, as well as some other Dell products, Dell Data Protect, but we have a large Azure infrastructure globally. And yeah, I'm keen to understand and what I've heard and seen from Dell Tech World on Azure Apex and all the other fine words that have been put to it, how it can help us expand scale as a business, and what that experience looks like from what we currently have in Azure to what that would potentially look like on-prem.
Yeah, and I imagine, Chris, you are someone who owns VxRail with Azure. You're not the only one in the user group who's like that. So I think this is going to be a very, very relevant conversation.
Very much.
We've got some polling to kick off here. So Jenny, are we able to get this up and running? All right, fantastic. So folks, if you would, just to kind of get a sense of what we've got in the audience, please answer these polls. Apparently hosts and panelists cannot vote, so I'm going to close my poll there. Jenny, please keep us up to date on this. So we've got 2 questions. One is, how many ecosystem environments are you managing today? Dino and Kenny, what do you expect here? I imagine more than one would be the answer, but what are you guys seeing out there?
Definitely more than one, I would say. I mean, the instances where we see people just operating within a singular ecosystem are very rare these days. Some startups, small organizations, yes, but by far and away, everyone's operating across multiple different ecosystems today is our experience.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would bet the
imagine.
same. Like 2 is true for most people, I guess.
Okay, great. So Jenny, is there a way that we can show the result for that one?
Yes, I'll give it a couple, maybe one more minute. We have about 55% of the participants, so we need a couple more people to
Hit those
hit
buttons.
for us.
All right, hit those buttons, but we're getting a good sense there. And then we've got a multiple choice coming up here to get another sense. So let's see here. Yeah, I imagine, you know, particularly if you think about an ecosystem, whether it's on-prem or in the public cloud, you know, right there's 2 ecosystems, right? All right, so let's bring that up, please, Jenny. All right, yep. So 2, 3, and 5 plus.
5 plus.
All right. Yeah, so there's a lot of ecosystems, a lot of management going on now. So now we'd like to get a little bit more of a sense of what those ecosystems might be like. So our second poll gives you a chance to kind of pick what you're working with. Jenny, if you could push that out, please. All right, fantastic. So which of the platforms are you using? If you could, please, it's multiple select. So let's get a sense of what we got in the audience.
This will be super interesting.
This way, I was going to say this one will be interesting.
Someone's just doing the whole elf for the elevator. Select all.
I could hit. I think I could hit most of those.
All right, Jenny, keep us posted on how we're doing.
We're about 66% have participated, so if we could get a couple more, that'd be great.
All right, well, I think we'll get there shortly. Yeah, I imagine, well, we didn't have a right in there, but I guess other public cloud, other on-prem can do it. All right, fantastic. Well, let's see, what do we have, Jenny? All right, so VMware and Azure, look at that, tied.
Wow.
Hyper-V's up there, AWS, let's see. Oh, I can roll. Oh, I should expand this a little bit. All right, so interesting. Kenny, Dino, what is this kind of what you guys expected?
For me, it's yes, absolutely what I expected.
Okay.
Yeah, no major surprises, but good validation.
Yep. All right, fantastic. Well, thank you folks for participating there. You know, we've got the baseline of our audience, Kenny. And when we were talking earlier, you know, we say multi-cloud, we say hybrid cloud, we say hybrid multi-cloud, or maybe you shouldn't say that. Can you kind of give us, you know, we were talking, you've got a way to get everybody grounded. So give us the foundation, please. How should we think about multi-cloud? How should we really give us some tools to think about this and from whence to go on? Yeah,
absolutely. I would say that if I had to define my role, the primary thing that I'm doing is what I'd call disambiguation. And disambiguation a lot of the time is just getting common language and helping people on the same page just so we can have common language right from the start. This slide is absolutely not necessary, but I was so proud of the title here that I wanted to flash it up there because I was inspired earlier today and I thought that is going to be an amazing session for me to submit to like Ignite or DTW at some point. So look out for that one at some point.
That is fantastic.
But these exactly as you said, David, these are terms that we hear all the time: hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, that one that really hurts, which is hybrid multi-cloud as one word. These are things we hear all the time, but these are defined terms. Well, the first two are, the third one is not, it's a non-thing. But the first two, hybrid cloud and multi-cloud, these are defined things, not by me, not by Dell, not by Elevate, not by any one company, but by our industry, and have been for quite some time now. And the yardstick by which we can measure this and see that it's true is we can go and ask ChatGPT and say, what is the difference between hybrid cloud and multi-cloud? And it'll tell you the exact same thing as I'm about to say here as well. Multi-cloud, super easy. It is just a state of being when you're using 2 or more cloud environments. And cloud in this case could be public cloud, private cloud, a mix. The key is that you're cross ecosystem. So you're using multiple cloud environments across different ecosystems. That's a multi-cloud state. And when you're in that state, it brings challenges. I think they're obvious, but let's run through some of them. You will have different ways of managing services. You'll have different services. You'll have different skill sets, different licensing, different support, different data protection methodologies, different everything, really. That is the state of being you end up in pretty much instantly as soon as you are using 2 or more cloud environments. That is multi-cloud. Hybrid cloud is a different thing. Hybrid cloud is the intentional implementation of a public cloud and private cloud within the same ecosystem. And that actually is designed to solve those challenges. So we take Azure and Azure Stack HCI, for example, or GCP and Anthos, or AWS and AWS Outposts, these things which are designed to be public and private with consistency. Consistency doesn't mean identical, but it does mean that there's consistency across management and services and operations and licensing and support, and all these things which are challenges or difficult in multi-cloud are inherently solved in hybrid cloud. So 2 different things. So I think useful to put them into context so we can talk about them effectively. But that at least gets us to a common language here. Even if everyone doesn't agree with it, we at least have common language to start with. And that gives us a jumping off point for where we go next, I guess.
And Kenny, you know, one of the things that jumps out to me with this is if I think about the members of the Elevate Technology user group, most of them probably have a private cloud. And then that means as soon as they go and touch a public cloud, they're in a multi-cloud state. So, you know, I don't know of any customer members that would, by that definition, wouldn't be in a multi-cloud state.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And lots of different people are trying to solve different multi-cloud challenges, if I can put it that way. So different organizations are identifying different challenges in multi-cloud and aiming to solve for those. So the way that Dell is looking to solve for multi-cloud is by taking things that we're already good at and bringing them into cloud environments. I mean, an example there would be data protection. If you're using multiple cloud environments, you may have different ways of protecting data there and different ways of recovering and different skills, license support, all those things. If you can bring one unified way to do that, it doesn't boil the ocean, it doesn't solve everything, but it identifies that one challenge and solves for that. Microsoft has Azure Arc, which is a suite of tools designed to solve other multi-cloud challenges around common governance and policies and bringing some Azure services into different environments. So again, identifying multi-cloud challenges and solving for those. There are different companies solving in different ways. And actually, we're often looking at a combination of different tools to solve these challenges. But that's fundamentally what a lot of us are trying to do just now.
Okay. Yeah. Dino, what are some challenges that you're seeing?
The most challenge that I see is the companies or the people working in companies basically in their day-to-day business. They are so overwhelmed with many tasks and to-dos, and getting the knowledge out into their brains, getting them into a state where they have time to learn these new technologies, automation as well as infrastructure by code, new deployment types like CI/CD pipelining, and all these new technologies which are meant to be there to make it easier. I mean, they make it easier at the point you get there, understand them, and you can implement them into their infrastructure and your deployments. So I see many people struggling that they have so much work in their day-to-day, sometimes like, how would you call it? They come to work, there's a fire and another fire, they try to go in and just survive over the day. So basically getting them a free time that they can learn new technologies and adopt them is my basically biggest challenge that I see, just because almost everyone I talk to these days has not enough people or IT staff that they would need to run an infrastructure in their size. The lack of people or specialists and lack of knowledge is, beside knowledge transfer, a big thing.
Well, expanding on that people aspect as well, because I think we can talk about the technical challenges of multi-cloud all day, every day, but the people aspect is really not to be underestimated, because multi-cloud can bring a lot of internal friction as well between teams. You can have different teams with different priorities, preferences, competing priorities, different wants and needs there. And that internal friction can actually be a real challenge as well, and one that's not spoken about that often, I think.
And at the same day, I mean, if you look into the modern way to deploy infrastructure, right, we're talking about infra as code. So you don't have the classical way of your silos. There's the network guy and there's the storage guy and there's the server guy. I mean, you're putting in your infrastructure as code deployment. You're putting all these technologies in, so you need to really join these people together in a room and merge them into one to look different into infrastructure and make a team out of them to then put out the code they need to have their blueprint, to have their deployment pipelines, to make leverage all these new ways to run, monitor, and deploy hardware, software, which is not like putting them into a rack and power them on. It's like in a public cloud, basically you go in, do it in your web graphical user interface, you put money in, you do it by Terraform, you do it by ARM, Biceps. There's so many ways to orchestrate hardware and software these days. And it's like, if you don't care about the people around this for the process, like as well as the security guy, governance, I mean, sometimes you really have someone putting in infrastructure into place, not talking to his colleagues, and you have a mess, and it takes you months and weeks to clear this mess again and put people on table and say, you need to talk to every one of your colleagues left and right and find a strategy, how you do governance, how you do naming, security, and all that stuff, because once it's there, it's very hard to change.
Chris, you've never run into that, have you?
Never. No, and to add to that, I think, yeah, the complexity of what you can have as a strategy for an on-premise to a cloud is, that really, that should be something simple, and then the more important stuff, as we'll call it, the building, the creating, should be on top of that. So that should be we should make it as simple as possible. I have suffered from complexity, and I continue to, but yeah, anything that we can simplify, the basics. And to Dino's point, those siloed teams, I think that is definitely what I see, when I speak to people. They all have their own ideas and strategy of what we should use and how we should use it. But there should be somewhere we could simplify that, and we should all work together as a big happy family.
Well, Chris, you talked about leaving, going on your transformation journey or your modernization journey with VxRail. You moved. You're in your role about 3 years, and you adopted, or you brought VxRail to LoopUp, correct?
Correct, yes. So, go on, carry on, David.
I was going to say, could you just share a little bit about how that worked and what your situation is? We've talked in the past, and you've got a very big Azure environment. Where do you see this cloud Apex cloud platform for Azure? Like, what interests you on that? And then Kenny, maybe you could talk a little bit more about what it is, what was announced at DTW, and what members should be thinking about.
Sure. So I think when I initially started my role, it was different to my previous role. It was hospitality. There was a lot of on-campus infrastructure. And when I moved, there was both. Then we had a decent cloud infrastructure and an on-premise, and acquisitions, etc. left some, I wouldn't say strategic, but there was a lot of things going on. And you're well aware, David, you and I engaged with Kenny back in, I think, in 2020 when I joined, and it was, how can I simplify this? And VxRail was a product, a very good product that I used in the past, and that was like my go-to. I think in addition to that, now if something like the cloud Apex platform being available, that would be something maybe we would have added on as well in sooner. But so I suppose where we are now with the journey and life cycle management and that kind of thing, it seems to me like a next natural step. I haven't used the product, but we heard lots of good things and how it works in theory. This seems like the evolution. Your converged infrastructure, your hyper-converged infrastructure. Now we're going to something that simplifies cloud and on-prem. Well, that seems to be the direction, and I think it will simplify a lot of people's decisions on, should we do this, should we do that, what's the strategic view for the company. I think platforms like this, what Dell are doing is very good for the industry, and again, to Dino's point, helping us simplify what we do as businesses and individuals in IT to have that common platform in both environments potentially, and build on that so we can make better products and better serve customers.
Yeah, Chris, I think well, we'll let Kenny talk a bit about what ACP for Azure is announced. But I think as we get the word out, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to realize these products might really help simplify and certainly give them a familiar experience with a different option. So there's my teaser, Kenny.
Yeah, well, I'm going to start off with a slide we used at Dell Technologies World, and then I'm going to go into a completely Kenny slide and chat through other things there. But the way that we're approaching multi-cloud at Dell is what we call multi-cloud by design. And actually, if we go back about 6 years maybe to the Microsoft Future Decoded event, I was speaking at that in London, and I gave a whole pitch. This is before I joined Dell. I gave a whole pitch there about how if you are in a multi-cloud state, you have failed. That was my whole thing there. I said, you've not designed this, you've not tried to be here, you've failed in your strategy because you're in multi-cloud. And a couple of people came up to me after and said, you've just rubbished my entire strategy. But hey ho, that was an opinion I had at that point. Dell has a much nicer way of putting it, which is we want to move you from multi-cloud by default to multi-cloud by design. So multi-cloud by default is a nicer way of saying by mistake or not intentionally, I guess. But we're in this place where we want to go to multi-cloud by design now, and that falls into two different buckets. We call them ground to cloud, where we identify multi-cloud challenges in the public cloud, and we bring Dell IP in there to solve for those challenges. I mentioned data protection earlier. That's one example there, but we're doing a whole host of things where we're bringing Dell stuff across public clouds to solve different multi-cloud challenges. On the cloud to ground, that's really implementing hybrid cloud. That's really taking innovations into public cloud there and bringing them on premises in as consistent a way as possible. Across, in the first instance, the Azure, Red Hat OpenShift, and then a bit later the VMware ecosystems there. And this is where we have to look back at what we have done to this point and maybe give a bit of a mea culpa and say, hey ho, maybe it wasn't perfect before, because we have been delivering VMware and Azure and Red Hat solutions for a while now. We've had VxRail out there. Chris says it's great. So great. Well, it is, because it's the most deployed HCI platform out there in the market just now, bar none. In fact, if we broke out VxRail to be its own company, it would still be the biggest company in the HCI market just now. So it's great. And really the thing that's driven the outcomes there is the VxRail HCI system software within that. That's what gives the outcomes which make it easy to deploy, manage, and so on within there. So it's that which has driven that forward. But off to the side, we've also been delivering Azure Stack HCI systems. We have the Dell integrated system for Azure Stack HCI in market just now, which is the most deployed Azure Stack HCI system in the market as well. Fantastic. But it's been developed by a different engineering team and a different product management team with different orchestration tooling within there and on different node types there as well. It's AX nodes instead of the VxRail compute nodes there. So that's been separate. And then we've also been delivering a Red Hat OpenShift validated infrastructure there built on PowerEdge and PowerFlex. Again, completely different. So these could be vertically consistent between cloud and on-premises. You know, VMware and Azure plus VxRail, you get VMware consistency between cloud and on-premises there. Azure and Azure Stack HCI, vertical consistency. OpenShift in GCP and OpenShift on-premises, great. Consistency there. But the consistency is not there on premises between these environments. And if we're looking at this multi-cloud by design strategy where we're trying to break down silos between different cloud environments, that has to extend to these on-premises ones as well. And so with the refresh to our 16th generation offerings here, that's basically what we have done. We've broken down those silos and we've created one way of delivering these outcomes, one set of automated management and orchestration tooling, one set of compute building blocks, and one set of enterprise software-defined storage capabilities across these ecosystems. And that automated management and orchestration is derived from the VxRail HCI system software, so that all that work that's gone into making VxRail so successful comes into these other ecosystems now as well to deliver consistent outcomes there around lifecycle management and deployment and serviceability and so on, with common compute, with common software-defined storage. Still got that vertical consistency between cloud and on-premises, but now, finally, that horizontal consistency between different platforms on premises as well, which I think is, well, a very good positive step forward.
It's a lot more by design. This is so with Chris being VxRail familiar and Chris having a large Azure deployment globally. Does this, to me, this seems like, hey, Chris, do you need all those actually out in the cloud, or do you want to repatriate some of those workloads? Would that be a move that, is that a way to think about it?
I'm going to answer a bit of that first before we switch to Chris there, but let's tweak the terminology there from repatriate to appropriate workload placement, because that's really what we're talking about here. I think that when you say repatriate, it can imply a failure in strategy or something like that. But actually what we're talking about is looking at where workloads are and seeing what's the appropriate location for them and bringing consistency in how we do that across those. And that should be an ongoing thing for any company, any workload, any environment. And what we're doing is bringing new tools to bear and new capabilities to make that a broader conversation than we've ever been able to have before. That's all.
Yeah, I think with, and I think anyone going into a cloud or has a cloud platform, managing it, I suppose a lot of people say financially they're scared of losing that control. Whereas if you then have a solution that gives you the option to say, hey, actually, I could put that on-prem quite easily, without all this migration, this big project plan, it simplifies, and I think will make business a lot more cost-effective, efficient going forward. And I think that's probably, the biggest step forward in sort of cloud to on-prem that we've seen so far.
So Chris has folks who are managing his VxRails right now. Dino mentioned the personnel, the people side, kind of silos of people or whatever. Is this going to make it easier for folks who are used to managing VxRail to take on this new stack? Or is he going to have to train up folks that are going to be,
It's going to make some things easier, but there are still a bunch of new skills to be learned there. Of course, it makes the initial deployment easier. It makes the ongoing lifecycle management far more repeatable, automatable, and tested and validated by Dell and Microsoft. But you're still going to need to learn the ecosystem there as well.
Well, now, Chris, do you have folks who are already managing your Azure?
Yes, yeah. And VxRail, and potentially they are different people. So I suppose with a solution, especially in the Azure sort of solution that's, that they're doing, it brings an element of, people, and it could be easier to recruit because Microsoft has a huge pool of, it has a huge following in how people are educated and education. So I think there is, there's positives, but in technology, there is always so much, but, maybe as there is these solutions like a hybrid multi-cloud, all these other fancy words we give it to, that gives us consistency from on-prem to cloud. It seems to me that it would simplify a lot, especially for people's maybe career, direction, what they want to go with it.
So Dino, would you recommend for Chris, if he's going to look at this seriously, should he consider his Azure folks, his current Azure folks, as training them up on this new platform? Or should he cross-train his VxRail folks? Is there a best practice to think about how you take your folks who are already taking, the public cloud management? Should they be brought on-prem, or should you take your on-prem management folks and kind of cross? Is there a best practice way to think about this?
I don't think so. That there's a best practice. I'm not sure what Chris and Kenny is saying after me, but I think it's much easier to have the people who are currently in the ecosystem and train them up, because at the end of the day, what Kenny just showed is like we have a full integrated and co-engineered software and hardware system, which is brought from a platform perspective into Microsoft Azure. So if you're already in Azure and you use all this automation stuff, the resource providers and all this knowledge, like you would look into a regular monitoring system in Azure for your VMs sitting in Azure, you have the same experience seeing your local connected with Azure Arc, of course, from a VM perspective, but you can see your local workloads, you see your local platform, you see your free memory space. And right now there's a lot of ongoing work to also integrate the whole life cycle and update stuff and all this to make it even closer to the public cloud, because I guess what I want to say here, what is true for most of our customers, they don't want to take care about a platform which is running on the edge. They want to use a cloud and see this stuff, but maybe a lot of them, because demand also switched to other people. We see a lot of developers right now with DevOps, DevSecOps, and all these requirements. They want to use a cloud region, right? And if Dell brings this platform and you install it into your local data center in your company, you just see it as your private Azure. So it's much easier to have the people on Azure having their private region, which is also managed out of Microsoft Azure, compared to the guys who run VxRail, and they have no benefit from learning the ecosystem, like how do you do governance, how you would do security and all that stuff, because these are perfect guys understanding how a data center works, how network connectivity works, how firewalling works. We need them on a different knowledge level, on a different place right now, because our goal is to bring the platform as easy as possible as an integrated system to Azure to speed up your business so that you can focus with your people on workloads, on strategies, on central management of your workloads like VMs, containers, other platform service and that stuff. So the biggest wish I guess I have and my customers have and my team always has is we don't want to spend much time on a platform level. We want to work on our IT solutions and have a benefit to get speed and growth and scale on the market with what we produce on top of the platform. And this is why you would need the infrastructure from Dell, which is perfectly co-engineered and integrated system beside a new silo, which is called HCI, running there forever. Like, don't touch it, never touch a running system like we had in the past, right? So I would say if there's someone from the VxRail perspective who want to educate and go on a path, ending up managing cloud workloads, being a DevOps in cloud, whatever, this is awesome because they understand the whole technology stack underneath, right? But if you have people who want to stay there because you're doing VxRail for your customers, for example, and all that stuff, it's fair to say you're fine staying there and just give the little bit of extra information to the daily ops who run your Azure workloads, right? Kenny, what's your opinion on this? I guess it's much easier to have the Azure people and giving them the little bit more of knowledge how they monitor, let's say, the hardware and platform, and then pull in the VxRail guys saying, there's an alarm, there's a broken hard drive. What's the process about this? Can you call Dell and help us swap the drive? Because this is something these guys do perfectly day by day with VxRail, with other Dell servers and stuff. And this is like I said, no silos. This is like, let's work
great
together.
way. Yeah, exactly. A great way to join those two worlds together in one unified platform. Kumbaya, shall we say? I totally agree with you there. We have a question that is in the chat.
Yep.
So we have Q&A. So I have a question which, if I paraphrase, is really asking, we have VxRail in market just now, that's been there for a bit, for bringing out these new platforms. How are we enhancing those capabilities? Not just bringing them, but how are we making it better, improving things like when I can lifecycle management, what I can lifecycle, things like that. How are we making the experience better? So in the VxRail world, for example, if there's a critical patch and update, I think we support that within 7 days of release. If it's a non-critical, within 30 days, which is what we have just now in the VxRail world. What we're doing in the new Apex Cloud Platform world for Azure specifically is that we're changing that to a 4-hour window, so that when a new update is released, we will not only will we support it within 4 hours, but it'll be available in the lifecycle management pane in Windows Admin Center to deploy within 4 hours of that. That's the result of a whole bunch of new co-engineering with Microsoft on that side there, but it means that you can choose when to lifecycle pretty much instantly. There is no need to wait for us to say you're good to go. It's pretty much instant there. So hopefully that answers how we're making that experience even better with the new platform.
And that said, I mean, just to clarify my last answer, I don't want to make VxRail small or something. I'm just saying these guys have a lot of processes that match the new platform as well, like the rack and stack, running the day-by-day data center operation, having all these fault tests, and whatever they do with VxRail can be done for the new platform as well. So I'm just saying, don't reinvent the wheel. Talk with these guys and look what day-by-day or day 2 tasks I have for the new Dell platform, and let's see who in future can jump in. If the VxRail staff just takes over the responsibility about the whole data center part, about the real hardware running in there, the bare metal, and then just talk to the Azure guys if they want to have an information why there's a green light, a blue light, a red light, I don't know, and just let their experience work with the people going through Azure, because the guys I see today working public Azure, they've probably never mounted a bare metal server into a rack. So they can learn from each other. And this is like a very cool process, going together in one team and then growing the hybrid team, which is a lot of on-prem knowledge, networking, routing, and all that stuff and concepts. And on top of this, we have the engineering team from an application perspective for the company. And that said, it's still very important when you shift workloads that you're not only doing the lift and shift. So the basic big challenge we have in the market is, after lift and shift, there's always the part of transformation for your workloads, right? If you just put your VMs to public Azure, you just get a big invoice maybe at the end of the month, and you're not using all the benefits of a database just out of a database dispenser and maintained by Microsoft and all that stuff. So educating the people is not about only using the hyperscaler, it's also about modern application design. In the end, maybe using some Kubernetes containers and modern deployment models. I want to say there's so much to learn there. The people just need to get onto the right path and track for their future, and you need to develop them. And there's a big community running with you guys, with my community in Germany, with the community we run in all over Europe here, to educate people on the way they need help. Either it's the data center part, where it starts with bare metal and the choice, do we go with OpenShift, VMware, or Microsoft Cloud Platform? What's the best for our use case? And the answer is always, it's not VMware or Microsoft, it's as well as most of the time. You could just use the awesome VxRail still and put there, for example, a Dell platform where with Microsoft Azure Stack HCI, where you just host some service like SQL managed instance or your AVD pools. You have some construction works. You need a very cool box to run your Windows 11 enterprise desktops with CAD software on it, and you need 3D acceleration. And at the same time, these drawings is the whole IP of your company, and you want to put them to the public cloud. Here we are. This is Microsoft Azure Stack HCI, which made the best solution for your VDI desktops there. But at the same time, you have a requirement to have your data replicated locally in your country, which is awesome for VMware in VxRail and the storage products of Dell. Then go with them. Dell brings a lot of these systems also to public cloud and hyperscalers, which makes it easy, because you're just, so let's imagine Chris sits there with his storage and he decides, what is our business continuity model and how do we manage this? And then he has Dell hardware on site. Now we have a lot of these systems coming or already available with public Azure support, right? So you put a software storage into Azure, and Chris just uses the whole graphical user interface he knows for years to replicate volumes up to public Azure. And my BCDR strategy is just bringing the workloads back in Azure because they're replicated. So Chris didn't need to learn Azure. He just learned the graphical user interface of the Dell storage, which is the same used in private in public Azure. And if he uses like 10 terabyte today, he pays 10 terabyte. If he uses 2000 terabyte or 2 petabytes tomorrow, he pays for 2 petabytes. If he goes back to 10, he pays 10. It's super easy to combine these without having the big amount of a learning path, learning Azure storage. It's just learn Dell, automate REST APIs, and run these storages in AWS, in GCP, in Azure. It makes it so much easier to have a partner like Dell who gives you a lot of easy-made technology. And this is what I love. Make complex stuff easy and usable for the operators. And this is where you win the game. Kenny, you agree?
Oh, you're making me blush, but sure.
Chris, as a user, what do you think about this? Does it make sense?
Yeah, it's complete sense to me as a user, and and when you're managing people, environments globally, and you can remove elements of it, and as you said, but business continuity. I mean, if I can move on-prem loads to the cloud because I'm having issues, there's a point where yes, it's a cost element, but do I care if my business continues? No, it gives me that whole rounded solution, from bare metal to hypervisors to cloud to from the ground up. And that's like you said, it's simplicity is what we all crave, so we can look at the more strategic things on making our customers' lives and our solutions a lot more better from that route.
Awesome.
So gents, we have one more polling question, and we can get to that. Jenny, if you could bring that up, please. just want to get a gauge of the biggest pain point for the customers and the members online. And as we're waiting for that, Chris, has this conversation helped you think about your personnel and how you might go about either expanding or changing the way you, or changing your environment?
Yes, and I suppose it's enforced things I already know. If you've got good people with the right attitude, and they will easily pick these things up, and the more you simplify it, the better. I mean, we have people managing VXRL, but they do it in Azure and vice versa. They might not have the same skill sets, to each level on Azure or VXRL, but you simplify these solutions so you have the kind of same experience of VXRL in an ACP environment, and it again it's a skill set, I think, which can be easier to recruit for, or it gives my current staff as well. They're all very willing and eager to learn and familiar with Azure, and this would be something that they would gobble up, so to speak, if once we've had a good look at it and what's under the hood.
It is amazing. We talk about tech all the time, and every time we get on these community hours, it circles back to the people and processes. But it seems like we get to the same mantra of tech's the easy part. It's the people and process that's the difficult part. So
I think from a people point of view as well, this seems like a solution where it could, if you simplify things again, you wouldn't have that overhead as many people in your recruiting. So you're more efficient going forward. Technology is enabling again, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a great point.
I want to just point out, which is one thing that's really amazing to me all the time. I mean, I have, from a skill perspective, right? I have the skills as an architect. I can write code and whatever. And every time I automated someone, or from my architect team automated something, we check it into our company DevOps, right? So on every time the guy from the help desk comes up and says, I need a SQL database, I'm just telling him, go to my repository, grab the script, put in the 5 parameters. And at the end of the day, this guy comes smiling and says, you know what? I deployed a SQL database today. I didn't even know that I'm able to do this. And the awesome part for me is, if the deployment was right and there's a green light, there was no step that was skipped compared to someone has to find a solution, but he doesn't have the skills, but he still tries to do it, right? So if this is green, I know my whole script was perfectly done. The SQL database is no danger state. It's not unsecure, because I made sure I transferred my brain into code, which is then in scale at my company's hands. And my colleagues left and right are able to do things which from a skill level they never could do. And then they reverse engineer code and they start to learn. And this is where the passion comes from, and then people grow. And this is the coolest point about all that for me. The simplicity,
you're elevating your people, Dino, as we all play on with.
Yeah, fantastic. So real quick to sum up the poll, it was up and then the results disappeared, but it looks like management. Oh, thank you, Jenny. Management is the top problem, with support and skill sets being the third, tied for second place there. Any surprises? No surprises? Reaction, Kenny?
I think that's pretty in line, especially from the management perspective. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Well, folks, thank you very much for sharing that and giving us a sense of what's out there for you. Kenny, we talked about multi-cloud, and we don't want to talk about hybrid multi-clouds. But thanks for giving us that framework. I hope that this, if everyone gets on the same language level, they can articulate either where the problems will be. It'll help them identify where the problems might be, or help them identify, what a solution would look like. And I think that's fantastic. This is called, this is the Apex cloud platform for Azure. And it's was announced at DTW. It's going to be readily available very shortly. The specifics, Kenny?
5 days.
5 days. So this is really going to be neat to watch. And then, folks, the second portion of our multi-cloud conversation is coming up next month. We're going to have the Vice President of Product Management for Multicloud, Caitlin Gordon, on to kind of give us an update as to, how this is going for a month, and then the Red Hat OpenShift version of the Apex Cloud platform. She'll share some of Dell's, a bigger picture of Dell's strategy here. But I think what's really apparent for the Elevate user group membership base is everybody here is in a multi-cloud state. So staying up to speed with the solutions in the multi-cloud space, particularly if you're familiar with vBlock, if you go way back, VxRail or PowerFlex or even XC series, these things are all of the lessons learned are being applied here. So, someone like Chris, where you've got VxRail and you've got Azure Cloud, these might be some great solutions to be looking into. And the Elevate Technology User Group wants you to know that this is a group where we can have those conversations as well. So thank you all for attending. Dino, thank you for dialing in. Kenny, thanks for dialing in. Chris, thanks for co-hosting. And everybody, please shoot us questions if you've got. Member services at elevateusergroup.com. Jenny, I will hand it over to you.
Yes, thank you again for joining today. Huge shout out to Dino and Kenny. Thank you again for participating this month. As David said, next month, the October Community Hour will be on that multi-cloud conversation. I threw a link in the chat. Go ahead and register today to save your spot. I also included a survey link in the chat. It would be great for you to fill that out. All of your feedback is very much appreciated. And once you fill that out, you will be entered into one of our prizes. And with that being said, if you enjoyed today's program and enjoy being a member of Elevate Technology User Group, please share future events with your colleagues, and we would love to have them. With that being said, thank you all for joining today, and we will see you next time. Bye, y'all.